And welcome. I'm Bill Newell with MSONewsports.com. We have Phil Stacey, Nick Kukuru, Matt Williams, and Nick Giannino here talking some sports. And Matt Williams, you've drawn the short straw here to go first, I think, with the latest on high school sports and what might be happening for some of the guidelines that have been released in the last day or so.
So we've got a 13-page document from the EEA, which is the Government Office of Environmental Affairs, I guess is what the A stands for. You'll have to forgive me if that's wrong. Alphabet soup over here. But so that's the first in a series of 3 reports. I guess the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is going to have one sometime on Monday. And then the MIAA is going to meet 3 days after that. And in between, the MIAA's COVID task force is going to try to take these things, that come from these other agencies and make sense of them and apply them to high school. So, step one, I guess, these guidelines apply not just to high school sports, but youth sports, everything K through 12. I guess if you're, a 4-year-old trying to learn to skate and you're only in, not in kindergarten yet, maybe you can go out there full bore. I don't know, but, that's just a small joke. But, K through 12, everybody. So basically we've all seen the categories already, the high risk, the moderate risk, the low risk. The categories haven't changed much. Football, wrestling, basketball, boys lacrosse are your high risk sports. And basically, they've outlined a number of steps that can be taken in order for high and moderate risk sports to be, compete in games under the law. And it's basically eliminate deliberate contact, which, for hockey and lacrosse, you'd have to play under no checking rules. Maybe for boys lacrosse, you'd have to eliminate the traditional face-off. Maybe you do a jump ball or a coin toss or something instead. Hockey, maybe a different type of a face-off, and limit intermittent contact, which would be accidental contact along the boards, what have you. In the weeds of this, it does permit intermittent contact while wearing a face mask. In other words, if you were playing ice hockey and you were going to do a face-off, you could, in the NHL, you could reach and pull your mask up for the face-off, right? I guess with kids and they have the full shield on, that's going to be a little harder to do. So maybe just wear the mask the whole time. I don't know. That's to be determined. But, the one sport that really I don't think can modify its rules to play under these circumstances is football. You really can't eliminate deliberate contact. I mean, tackling, blocking, these things like this. So, there was a lot of, football's canceled going around yesterday, Thursday. There was a lot of pushback from athletic directors that said, well, football is in fact not canceled. I think we are going to be playing a big semantic game with this. I think it's turned into marketing. It may be postponed, but certainly there's no way that you can play football with these rules that have been released. And to me, that's the lead story. You can call it anything you want, but it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, and I'm calling it a duck.
Quack.
Right.
Maybe we'll have to get some flag football going for these kids. Think they'd allow that? That'd be interesting.
I know Vermont is doing 7-on-7. Personally, I think that's kind of lame. I wouldn't bother. Yeah. I don't know what the solution is. I think, as we've talked about on the podcast for several weeks, what you're going to see is a traditional fall under modified rules for every sport except football. And football, we're going to punt and pray. I mean, they're going to refuse to say it's canceled. They're going to say it's postponed. Whether or not they play in the spring or an abbreviated in between the winter and spring season, we'll see. I find that to be somewhat far-fetched, but they're not going to cancel. They're going to postpone is what I think, and then deal with it later. If they have to cancel it, they'll cancel it, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, whatever. They are going to be adamant that no one uses the phrase football is canceled anytime in the next month or so. They're going to really hammer that postponement thing. And, you know, again, I personally think it's marketing, but I guess factually it is correct if they're going to leave the door open for something later on.
Yeah, I agree completely with Willie. I think that the terminology is going to be very important here. I think at this point we're probably 90 to 95% sure we won't be seeing games at any point this fall when it comes to football. But that doesn't mean something might not happen after the new year, whether it's in that window of March to April or some variant thereof. I think the High School Football Coaches Association, the state, as Willie said, is pushing back adamantly to try to get something done for their players. And when that is going to be, you know, something along those lines. And Willie and I were talking last night about this a little bit. You know, none of us obviously know how things are going to be 4 months from now, 5 months from now, a week from now. So how do you know it's going to be any better then than it is now? I mean, you run the risk of, you know, putting it out there for, well, we're going to try, say, March 7th, but that doesn't end up happening because things are worse, or you're still at the tail end of flu season, or any myriad of things that could disrupt the plan here. So I don't know. It's I want there to be hope. I understand why, based on what we're hearing here, why with the blocking and the tackling or whatnot, why this would not necessarily be the wisest thing to undergo right now, especially with the sense that I think it's very important. You don't want to start something and then have to stop it. You know, you don't want this to be like high school in Georgia where they open up and then a week or two in, you know, there's mass outbreaks and everything's shut down. You don't want to do that. When you start it, you want to see it through. So we're going to have to see what happens.
You know, I go back to what we've talked about a number of times. I still wonder that even if we use the term postpone, fine, you know, delay, but you still have a bunch of districts now that have come out this week, and students aren't going back into the buildings at the high school level. And how do you, and I still wonder how they make that mental connection of not going to school, but going out on the football field and practicing football or other sports, you know. And I know that the two are not necessarily, there's not a you know, something that there's no rule that says that if you don't go back in school that you can't play sports. I get that. But still, I just wonder where individual schools are going to come down on that. And so, you know, at the end of the day, maybe you have 3 schools in the Northeast Conference that can play, but maybe you don't. You know what I'm saying? You know, and I'm not even talking football. I'm talking other sports, you know, so. No,
and then I think that spiderweb bill reaches out even further. You know, it branches out into, you know, it's going to have to be a family by family case. Are they comfortable with their kids playing ball, you know, whether it's football or field hockey or running cross country or whatever it is? You know, that's obviously going to be a choice. So even if there are some sports played, we may not see the traditional full teams, what they were. It's kind of like this whole year has been. You have to put a big asterisk next to it and just say the year when everything went topsy-turvy and up was down and right was left and whatnot, and things just weren't the same. To get back to your point, Nick, I do think that flag football would be in the discussion. Certainly not ideal. I don't think anybody would be jazzed up about it, but it's an alternative to playing, although it would have to be with some really, really, really strict guidelines as far as stopping ball carriers and, you know, any kind of blocking would have to be abolished and things like that. So I think it's important to note, though, too, and I saw a really good thread today by Sean Hart, who is the athletic director of Burlington High School, who, you know, mentioned that in all of this, he and his fellow athletic directors across the state are really trying to come up with plans so that, okay, this is the hand we're dealt. How can we best deal with this? Is there a way to deal with this? And how can we do so, most importantly, safely for all involved? And he laid out a number of possible scenarios where, you have the so-called traditional 3 seasons where some sports just aren't played. You play the ones that can play, and that's that. So you miss out on football and cheering in the fall. You miss out on girls and boys hockey. You miss out on girls and boys basketball. You miss out on wrestling in the winter. You miss out on boys and girls lacrosse in the spring, things like that. He mentioned some 4-season type scenarios where, as we've talked about many times, say football gets moved to March or and April to play a condensed season. A 5-season plan. There's all kinds of different plans, which personally I think is great to have a lot of options available and to be able to change as needed or if needed. But we have to come up with some kind of statewide plan that makes the most sense, is the safest, as I keep coming back to that word, and that most importantly we can put into place sooner rather than later, because there's an awful lot of people, I feel like, will we, won't we, what's going to happen, when are we going to do it? I mean, we got to get this information. And it's not just us, certainly. I mean, there are thousands and thousands of families across the Bay State wondering, if they're going to be playing sports, when they're going to be playing sports, and how safe will it be.
Yeah.
Well, that's where I think it's been bungled from the start. What is the goal? What is the end? Why are these things staggered like this? Why is one committee not communicating with the other? Why do we have this poor communication where here's this report that makes it look like football is canceled, and then we have to walk it back because the DESE is not ready with their report yet? Well, then why didn't you sit on this other report until they were ready? Why isn't this coordinated? And secondarily, what is the goal? Why has there not been some number, some percentage of tests, something set out to where, okay, when it hits this level, it's going to be safe? Because I just, all the 4-season, 5-season plans are predicated on the winter sports starting on time, right, in January. The test I read yesterday is at an all-time low, 1.2%. Is it ever going to get lower, realistically? Is it going to be lower in December? I would say probably not. And so then the winter doesn't start on time, and then you're backing up all these mythical sandwich seasons that you're talking about creating. I just wish that months ago, when the rates were so high, that some agency had said, okay, when the rates get to this low, it's going to be safer to do things to make people feel better. I just don't feel like there's any light at the end of the tunnel here, any metric by which we've been told certain things are going to be safe, or if we hit this benchmark, this can happen. I find the whole thing to be very frustrating.
Yeah, I think particularly if you're a spring coach, I mean, they just got their entire season wiped out. I know it's a little different because it's at the end of the school year, but now they're looking at potentially having their season, crammed into a small period of time to accommodate the other 2 seasons, and after they got completely wiped out a year before. So, if I'm a softball or a baseball or a lacrosse coach, I'm not going to take that line down.
Do you think we could get to a point where, say, there are, spring coaches going up against some of these fall coaches, governing bodies, obviously, and given that pushback, like, hey, no, we don't want our season cut into because you didn't have a football or a soccer or a field hockey season?
I think that's exactly what it's setting up, really, to be honest with you.
That's what I was I talked about that last week, in the podcast. And the fact is that, maybe the thinking will be kind of what Nick's just saying there, is that, okay, we've lost the fall. Okay. But we lost the spring too. So to Nick's point, and to what the spring coaches might say, everyone's got to take the hit here. And if the winter sports take a hit, so be it, depending on how this plays out. And maybe that's the way it has to be in this case, because as much as I agree with Willie too, in the sense that I'd love to see something creative done. Can you really pull it off? Can you do a 3-week football season, or a 4-week football season? I don't think so, but whatever.
Well, I've run a straw poll today via text message of assistant football coaches and head coaches. How many games would you like to play to make the season worth it. And the average number that I'm getting is around 7.
Yeah.
And under the Burlington plan, that's 8 weeks, 2 weeks to get ready. You're talking 5-6 games. Is 5-6 games and no Super Bowl really worth it? I mean, I don't know. You know, some guys would say 1 game is worth it just to have a game, but I don't know, 3, 4, 5 football games. I mean, you know, forced in like that with injury risk, and what's the atmosphere going to be if there's no championship? I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, it's a lot of time and effort that these guys put in. I think to make it worthwhile, you're talking at least 6 games and hopefully some kind of playoff.
I think another thing that obviously no one can predict, including the Farmer's Almanac, is what's the weather going to be like in the 1st of March? You know, March 7th, we could have 10 inches of snow on the ground. You know, and it's not that football doesn't play in that weather, but they certainly don't start in that weather. We've been fortunate the last few winters where they've been pretty mild, especially last year, but that's not to say we couldn't have something like 5 or 6 years ago where we were still getting pelted with storms into April. So that brings up another problem, certainly not health related per se, but it's just another monkey wrench in this ongoing year of continual monkey wrenches. So, hey, best laid plans, right? Things out of your control.
Well, let me just make this, you know, back to Willie's point originally, that let's say we do get the vaccine, you know, come the end of the year, come January 1, winter sports are condensed. Football, maybe the fall sports takes that window that you're talking about, Phil, you know, in March or whatever. You know, baseball, you know, normally, except for this past year, spring sports, you know, that first month is brutal, absolutely brutal for baseball. I think this year was pretty good, though, if I'm not mistaken, but it wasn't as bad as it had been. You know what I mean? But in the past, you know, April baseball can be brutal at the high school, you know, playing on these high school fields with the rain and all the stuff. I mean, if you got a good month of baseball in May, and, you know, maybe you didn't do as many playoffs as they do now, but, you know, got a good month in or 6 weeks or whatever, that'd be pretty decent, you know.
Going back to Willie's point about, you know, polling some of the assistant coaches and how many games they'd want to play and whatnot. I think a lot of it is going to come down to, you know, given the choice between no games or much fewer games, or you can play, but there won't be playoffs, or we're not playing for a championship, you know, what do you want to do? I mean, that's a decision I think people are going to have to face. Is a 5-game football season ideal? Not by any measure, I don't think. But is it better than not being able to play at all? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a 17-year-old high school kid. I can't answer that.
You're close though, Phil. You're not that far.
Yeah, I'm real close. Yeah, multiply it by 3, and there you go. You know, I mean, what do you guys think? If you were an athlete, you're a high school senior, and you're going to lose your soccer season or your hockey season or your tennis season, or you can play, you know, 1/3 of the games you would normally play, what would you choose?
I know if I was planning on, say I played football and I was planning on playing, you know, college baseball or lacrosse, I don't know if it'd be worth it to play that condensed football season in the middle of 2 others.
Yeah,
and it depends if these kids, you know, want to have a future at the college level. That's a good point. But otherwise, you know, looking back, I would hate to miss the full season. You know, if they can salvage any sort of season, any amount of games, I think I'd be for it.
Yeah.
That's what I tend to think, you know, especially after everything that's happened here. If you get the go ahead and it is safe and you can play, I mean, to me, 5 or 6 games is better than no games.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, maybe these guys don't want to play their non-playoff games, right? I mean, it's the same thing. It's going to be the same kind of atmosphere. This season is going to have the atmosphere of those non-playoff games that everybody hates if there's nothing on the line.
I don't know. Will it though, or will it be more celebratory because it's like, hey, we're finally back. We toughed it out. We made this happen. It's not traditional, but we're part of something that will always be remembered because we were able to make it work. We followed the guidelines. We stuck with it. It's now deemed safe for us to play. And hey, you know what? We can get 5 games in. That's better than nothing.
You could get a league title out of it. You know what I'm saying? Pretty much, right? I mean, most of the leagues now, they're small enough that I think you could probably get a league title out of it.
Play every team in the league. Yeah.
It might sound silly to say because, you play to win no matter what the sport is, but maybe the without sounding corny here, the triumph is just being able to get back out there and compete against a kid from another city wearing a different uniform and do so safely.
Yeah, I mean, it's not the sense I'm getting from guys, but maybe they're just depressed right now. And I think I do think when you look at what's projected for the winter, and I think it's a pipe dream anyway. I mean, if we can't play now with the numbers where they are, I don't know how the numbers are going to be better in March. I just don't. And I think it's, I think it's another punt. We're just going to hope, cross our fingers that it's going to be better. But if you look at, we've been saying the same thing. What's make a timeline. We're here. March is over here. You go back exactly that far. We've been saying the same stuff. Well, hopefully it'll be better Labor Day, September. It's not. So I have no reason to believe that all of a sudden it's just going to change. I mean, we'll just keep kicking it down the road and hoping. But a lot of times I feel like it's just false hope at this point.
We do get a lot of guidance, from the college level. That has really kind of happened. They kind of put the exclamation point, either lead the way or give us the exclamation point for what we do at the high school level. But and this past week, we've learned about the big time college football. They're kind of all over the place a bit here, but there've been some big cancellations and so on this past week and so on. So, that you get different things going on at the college level. And I know college is not the same, but yet on the other hand, it did appear like a lot of college programs were working through this, practicing, preparing, without any problem, for the most part, so who knows?
BC right up the road ran 2,000 tests or something without a positive. I saw on Twitter, something like that.
Who was that?
I think they had
Boston
one
College.
positive.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doing the right things. Not every conference is canceled yet. We're going to have some sort of college football, it looks like, some of these schools, but the big ones, a lot of the big ones washed away.
And you will have some schools opening. It's fun. Like some schools are going to be opening in Massachusetts, and it'll be interesting to see once you get the data for that, how that plays out. But we won't know anything for at least probably October 1st before we really kind of feel, get any sense about how that works. There's some districts are going back in the hybrid model. And so, and as we speak today on Friday, all the plans are supposed to be in, but we've seen a lot of schools in our area saying, no, we're not going back in building, come September.
If I'm reading between the lines too, it does seem like some non-football sports may be able to play under the guidelines that the EEA set forth. Correct me if I'm wrong, but some of those non-contact type sports, although I did see that it said everything had to be played outside, which would mean what? Like volleyball, I think, is the one fall sport, girls volleyball, that would have to be moved from inside to outside. I'm not sure how they do that, but
Put it on the beach, Phil. Come on.
I don't know, because they allow hockey. Hockey's indoors, so I don't know how specific it is about the outdoor stuff. Because I know like the youth hockey people were pretty happy with this. They're going to be able to modify their rules and play games now, and obviously that's inside.
And you made a good point too about cross-country races, how sometimes those sharp elbows get out and somebody could get hit there. So I don't know if there'd be staggered times or. I
believe that I did speak to a cross-country coach. Most likely you would just have the schools run the course on their own and then just do total team times like the Tour de France. So people shows up, their 5 guys run, their time adds up to 162 minutes. They leave on their bus. Half hour later, Beverly shows up, their guys run, their time adds up to 161 minutes, so they win the meet type of thing. And then there's no mixing of groups. Then, the only people that you're out there with are the people you practice with every day anyway. That most likely would be how cross country would go. And I don't know if that precludes like state meets and, conference meets, because those are big crowds. So you're probably talking about just dual meets. But, so back to Phil's point, I as I said on the pod, 2-3 weeks ago, I don't think we're at a full wipeout. I think we're going to be modifying rules and playing some of these sports. It's just not going to be football.
Golf.
Definitely golf. I don't. That was on the list of low risk, and they should be able to operate. I imagine somewhat close to a regular normal season. Usually they send out groups of 4. Maybe they'll just do groups of 2 or something. I don't know, but that seems like it should be no issues.
I'm not a video game guy, but they have the Madden football. Maybe we could create the Rudlaw football video game for North Shore football, something like that.
We could just create players. We could give them their own stats and accolades and height and weight and all that, and throw them in the game.
Yeah.
I even think soccer would be all right. I mean, you just, you get a little more strict with the cards and have everybody have a mask or a bandana. And, if you're doing a corner kick or a throw in, everybody pulls their mask up. I mean, it said intermittent contact would be all right with a face mask.
Yeah.
I think soccer and field hockey might be all right.
I think so too. And there should be no.
That's kind of half the battle, right? Field hockey might be tough to eliminate those scrums in front of the net. I feel like those just naturally form. Put down and you get about a 7-8 player scrum in front of the net. That's pretty much half the game.
Yeah, I did ask Willie last night who'd be writing the pickleball column this fall, because that is low risk and deemed safe to play. So those might stop popping up all over the varsity pickleball games.
There's St. John's Prep will form a team.
Yeah.
They got a team for everything over there.
True.
They got mountain biking. That was deemed safe.
Mountain biking.
That's St. John's. They're boys who have nothing to do, can't go out for the field hockey team because they don't have one.
True.
Well, gentlemen, we have like a couple of minutes left. Anybody want to weigh in on any of the pro sports or anything like that, around the area that we've seen so far?
We can talk quickly about the Celtics. And Phil, I'm sure you got plenty to say about the Bruins as well. I'll keep it brief here. But so they locked up the 3 seed. That's official. They're going to be playing the Sixers in the opening rounds, which is probably the best matchup for them. Sixers are a little banged up right now. Ben Simmons, not sure if he's coming back for the first round of the playoffs or not. Likely not. Joel Embiid got banged up the other night. So their 2 best players are, kind of unknown right now. And I just think the Celtics match up well against them as is. They're kind of in Embiid's head, if you ask me. So I think that's a good first-round matchup for them. We'll see if they come to play. Jaylen Brown's been playing really well. Tatum's still coming along. Obviously, I wrote about Hayward earlier this week. He's been hooping. He might have to leave the bubble at some point, having another child, but we'll see how that goes. How long he's out of there. But even without Hayward, I think they got a good shot at beating the Sixers in the first round. And then after that, who knows? They'd have to probably go against Toronto. So that could be a tough matchup. But the East playoffs are set. The West, we got a play-in game tomorrow. Blazers in Memphis for that 8th spot to play my Lakers in the first round, and then the playoffs will officially start on Monday or Tuesday.
Phil?
I'll keep it a little briefer than Nick's brief thing. Bruins Hurricanes tied 1-1. You can probably watch Game 3 after listening to our podcast here Saturday at noon. See if the goaltender maybe got a talking to by somebody in the organization after his comments following Game 2. Although, like Willie said, maybe it's taken the heat off of an injured David Pastrnak. Who knows? Just real quick, too, I want to say I was talking to a friend about the Red Sox. I'm one of the dopes that still, tunes in to check out how the Red Sox are doing every night.
I do, too.
And the real shame to me, everybody beats them up for trading bets. And hey, granted, he's a generational talent. He's probably a future Hall of Famer. Another 3 home runs last night. He's tied for the all-time Major League lead, 3 home run games, 6 now or something.
Yeah, ridiculous.
But I really believe he wasn't going to re-sign here. To me, the crime of this team is how they have decimated the pitching staff. You know, from a team that won, 119 games 2 years ago on the strength of its pitching. You know, my freshman Beverly High 1984 baseball team would be raking against this pitching staff. They're awful.
It's atrocious.
It's awful.
You throw the starter and he lets up 5, and then the guy comes in for a relief, lets up another 6. It's like, it's tough to watch.
You can't do anything if Sale is Tommy John out for the year, and you know, we certainly hope that Eduardo Rodriguez comes back, is healthy from his heart problems related to COVID. But my God, they're rolling out like stiff of the week every day. Evaldi's not pitching. It's ugly to watch.
It's really tough.
They sold their soul for that championship in 2018. I mean, with Dave Dombrowski, that seems to be what happens every time he leaves the place. The Sox are no different. It was kind of tough for them to fire him or put the reins on him after, you know, they won in 2018 and he went and re-signed Sale, signed Evaldi, which we're seeing a really bad deal.
Yes.
And that's just part of the deal. I guess they're just gonna have to rebuild now.
You should see how much mileage Rusty Tucker still has in his arm, Nick. I'm sure he'd make the trip into Fenway every day.
He throws harder than the guys they got now.
Yeah.
Well, what a down note to end on here, guys. Man. Ooh.
Hey,
well, they had a couple wins in a row. What they took 2 from the Rays, I think, in a row, or the Blue Jays, one of those 2, and then since then it's been really bad, really bad.
But the Patriots start practice on Monday, right?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Officially start practice. That'll be interesting.
We'll see who shows up for that.
I mean, are we just going to have a professional football game on September 10th? Like, they're not talking about I mean, I watched Hard Knocks the other day. You know.
No, they're back, baby.
Postponement. I mean, so the NFL is just going to do it, you know. Kudos to them.
Care.